Welcome to the Shield Your Business from Chaos podcast, where there's no building, no people, no third-party suppliers, and no systems all combined to create Chaos the Dragon, which is battled by King Phoenix and his shield. Is that it's interesting to see how the exercises have changed over, because we've been doing exercises with all of our customers all the way through COVID. Like nobody has missed any of them. And so the thing that's kind of interesting about it though, is to see the responses and how the responses have changed from 2 years ago to a year ago to today. Because 2 years ago, there was no such thing as work from home. I'm using 2 years as pre-COVID.
Yeah.
That there was no such thing as work from home. Everybody was in the office. There was no questions asked. There was no remote desktop. There was no, VPNs, no nothing. Everybody was in the office come hell or high water. A year ago, nobody was in the office, and it was totally okay to let things slide and everything like this, whatever. The only thing that didn't slide was payroll, but things like AR and AP and stuff like that, whatever, they kind of happened whenever people could or whatever, and everything like that. And everything in the financial world, so CUs and banks and investment houses or whatever, everything was all paper. It was all wet signatures everywhere. Like there was no such thing as digital anything.
Yeah.
And then now it's not so much that it's like, holy cow, it's like a non-issue anymore, but everybody can work from home now in varying levels, because some take their laptops home, some leave their laptops at the office. Sorry, some take their laptops home, some have a workstation at home that's an office workstation that either VPNs into the servers or does remote desktop through their desktop sitting at the office. Now, the remote desktop sitting at the office is the most dangerous one, because if your power goes out at the office, you've got
not to mention performance wise. And all of the hoopla of like, a remote desktop with Outlook, although it might be better with Office 365, I don't know, but that always used to be this like ugly.
Well, and it's interesting, you used to get IT departments who were like adamant that they wanted to keep everything in-house. Like there was, not so much that it was all in-house, but you couldn't have passwords out of the office in essence. And now it's just like almost the Wild West. Not quite, working from your home computer at home, but like it's like, wow, that's pretty, like it's a pretty big shift. And so the part that's interesting from a BCP side of it is that what it does is that it starts to change your threats. And it used to be that we never did a new threat risk assessment until there was either you moved offices, you moved locations, you changed this, you changed that or whatever, or something in your environment changed.
Right.
Well, with your workforce now being not at the office anymore, that's a pretty big change in environment.
So number one, I think this is a great topic for today. And number two, I actually think that would be a great topic for talking about CRAs. I think that would be a worthwhile topic at the conference, whether you do it by yourself or whether we do it, because everything that you just said is so incredibly valid. And I think people do need to hear it.
Use King Phoenix and Shield with its mapping, its dashboards, its permissioning, its dependency mapping, and its automatically redacted plans to shield your business from chaos. KingsBridgeBCP.com. The part that's interesting is that like we did one for a CU in LA, and they wanted to look at the PSPS, like the personal safety power shutoffs that California does, like at the drop of a hat, and they can turn off power. They went through a PSPS, I think it was last year, for 3 days. And so you can just have power turned off for 3 days. They can give you as much warning as they want to, which according to these guys is like somewhere between half an hour to 2 hours, but that's not going to do any good. The thing that's interesting is that you then have a workforce of say 700 people who are all 600 of which are working from home. Those 600 are now absolutely cut off because there's no ability for them to be able to connect back to the office because they only have power for so long.
Yeah.
And it's like,
no, you're right.
Everybody used to spend massive amounts of money on generator, your building and everything of this, whatever, and having a certain amount of your building, generator backed up and everything like that. And now it's irrelevant because
In that situation, yeah.
yeah. But even in like, it's interesting to see how the threats have changed, because it used to be that, a power failure was a big deal to a business because, you had to have enough of the office generator backed up. And well, now you don't, because everybody's in essence at home. You're not going to get them to come into the office. And with these guys in LA, they did a whole bunch of I'm blanking on the name of it. Anyways, the remote, like the sort of the hoteling offices where you can just go to like I'm blanking on the company name. Anyways, you can do the hoteling thing or whatever, and it's all the way around, like all over the city. And so depending on what area is out of power, you can just go to an area that has power and do whatever you have to do from there. You don't have
Kind
to
of
have
like going to a Starbucks.
Yeah, well, they've kind of shunned that. They're like, please don't do financials from Starbucks. Not that Starbucks is like sniffing your data traffic, but they just don't need people, staring over your shoulder kind of thing, I guess. But yeah, they send them to the Regis facilities all over the place.
I was going to ask if you were thinking of Regis.
Yeah, and so I'm like, I can picture the logo, I can picture the name, but what's the letters? Anyways, they send them to Regis facilities or whatever, and they drop their warm site. Like they used to have a warm site that people could go to for their call centers that they could, in 20 minutes be hooked up and ready to go and everything. And they just dropped all of that and they put all the money into Regis. But the thing that's interesting on it is that if it's deemed that a percentage of your business has to go to these Regis locations, they don't need wet signatures anymore, or they don't use wet signatures anymore. So now they can just do it as, digital signatures or this or that. And it's like, thank God, because it makes it way easier from it's a lot more flexible from a BCP perspective, but it's also, there's other pitfalls with it, I guess. And so it's interesting to see how all this is going to sort of evolve or work out or whatever.
So thinking about a power loss and physically moving people, regardless of the fact that, so much of the workforce can work from home. One of the things that I always found interesting in planning for whether it was specifically like a Regis or a Cyrus One, or whether it was like literal hotel space.
Yeah.
What I always thought was interesting was how absolutely adamant any steering committee was that their solution would work.
Oh, yes.
Specifically using hotel space.
Yeah.
Now, they were the ones that actually had a contract with a hotel. Like, across the street from the building, I don't necessarily always see the logic, because okay, if it's just power in your building that goes down and you need to relocate 1,000 people, go to the ballroom across the street, kind of a thing. But that's a lot of, even with a contract, that's you're still taking some risk.
Yeah.
And if your location is not carefully chosen, depending on the scale of your disaster, then that contract may or may not be as valuable as you think it is. Now when you're talking about a big company, like let's say one of the big oil and gas players, and they have a contract with a hotel chain, that's